Chris Carlson, Jake Janz, welcome to the Passion Project. Super stoked to have you here. We've been talking beforehand, and I'm just really fired up. You truly are two of my favorite guys. I'm really blessed that we've become friends, and we've been working together. We'll definitely fill in the blanks about how that's all come about, and that's what we're going to do today. Truly, we're gonna connect the dots. And there's a lot known about a part of your world, but we're going to connect it all. Like, where'd you start, and what brought you here? Because it's been an interesting path, and a lot of good and some really big challenges, and we're gonna talk about all of it. And but it's super fun. Every time we're together, it's always fun. Always two of the best looking guys I know. Always big smiles. Super fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shucks. And there's always somebody honking outside, like we're in New York, but we're actually here in Newport Beach, Costa Mesa. We're all residents of Newport Beach, and that plays a pretty pivotal role in your life story, right? And I'm really excited to connect all the dots, because what I always say is, in this format, I'm always intrigued in what I'm going to learn, even with people that I spend a lot of time with. I think I know a fair bit. There's tons that I don't know, and then I think that is really the beauty of what we're doing, is because I guarantee a lot of the people, even the people that know you really well, don't know the whole thing. And as the organization, I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but even as the things that you guys are focused on get further and further down the road, almost 10 years in now, this takes on a life of its own. And I think it's really important to help everybody understand the roadmap and the path that got us here. So that's what we're going to do today. Again,
Right.
The Passion Project is all about talking to really cool people that do really good things, and helping everybody else understand the whys and the hows behind it. So that's what we're going to do.
Sounds great, Mark.
Cool?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm stoked. So the way I think it's going to go is we're going to go chronological today, because I think that's going to be the best way to capture it all. And so we're going to talk about you and your families, where you grew up. We're going to talk about Newport Beach, how you ended up here, and what the experience has been here. And certainly what that's going to entail is this pivotal event, this tragedy that happened, and then what's come from that. And because there's been incredible good that's come from it, even though it was, formatted, or it happened in a challenge, big. Again,
Right,
I never do justice to things that are like this. We're going to keep it upbeat today. That was one of the commitments we made to each other. And we're going to talk about all the really good stuff, but we're going to have to shine a light on that at some point as well. It wasn't my phone. I don't know whose it was. It's all part of the deal. All right. So, one of the other fun things about having you guys here, this is the first father-in-law, son-in-law, family pod 2+1 that we have. So there's a good dynamic. There's a great dynamic there that we'll also talk about. So really cool to have you guys in here. All right, let's go. So this is where I thought we would start. Let's just jump right in. And, here we are again in Newport Beach, and you guys are super involved, and we'll talk about that. But Chris, where did you grow up?
So I grew up on the other coast.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So grew up in a great family in New England, the Mystic Seaport area in Connecticut. And my father was working DOD, so he's working for the submarine contractor there.
Was he civilian or was he military?
No, he was civilian. And so grew up in Connecticut, learned how to sail in Mystic Seaport, great upbringing, country setting. And then my dad was transferred to the Pomona division of General Dynamics. And so we came out when I was a sophomore in high school. Kind of a tough time to move, but did that. And
you moved where?
Moved to Rancho Cucamonga, Alta Loma.
Gotcha.
And so grew up there, got to know Newport. 15th Street was our favorite place to go. That's where all the 909ers hung out. You guys probably knew that.
Yeah, that's why we didn't go there very much.
For sure. And so grew up there, and eventually met Terry. We both went to Upland High School together.
Oh. Did you guys date in high school?
No way.
No.
She was a year older, cheerleader, untouchable. She says if I had only asked her out, but I don't believe it.
Well, I have to say that of all three of us, we all married up.
Absolutely.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
There's no doubt about it. We love Terry.
And so kind of followed my dad's footsteps, became an aerospace engineer. It was either going to be pilot or aerospace engineer. Decided to go aerospace engineering. Cal Poly, got into DOD again, worked for the Pomona division, spent a couple of years in Fort Worth for 2 years. That's where Ben was born, actually.
Oh, wow.
And that was 81, 82 timeframe. And then Terry said, I think I need to come back to California. I hope you come with me, but make no doubt about it, I am going. So I made the right decision and went with her. And so we had Stephanie, who Jake ended up marrying, and Ben. Ben was 2 years older than Steph. And, Alta Loma was a great place. It was a great hub to grow a family. We skied. We went to the beach. Terry's family was really into surfing, spent a lot of time at San Onofre on the slow waves because I wasn't that good. But that's where Ben kind of got the love of that. We sailed quite a bit. We backpacked a lot in the Sierra Nevada. And so it was a pretty great life with a lot of adventure and a lot of fun, and got Ben into athletics. He was a great swimmer, funky stroke, but super big heart and just a killer instinct. Eventually got into polo, played hockey, was not very good at t-ball and baseball, so we dropped that pretty quickly. But it was really good. And I got a sense of Ben early on that he was very tough. Like he could do things. Like even as an 8-year-old, I took him to the top of Half Dome. Not many 8-year-olds do that.
Not a lot of dads do that either.
Yeah, we got a great picture of he and his cousin and myself with a big American flag on the top of Half Dome that 4th of July. It was great. That was before cell phones, obviously. Guy took a picture and he sent it to us. It was great.
Wow.
So but back to his character. We did a lot of winter camping. Never a complaint. Just really, you could tell he had this quiet drive in him, and so saw that early on.
Got it.
Yeah.
How cool. Again, this is exactly why we did. Like everything you just said, I had no idea, but it also starts to define your future. You mentioned growing up sailing on the East Coast as a kid. Well, you guys are big, passionate sailors now.
Yeah.
And outdoorsy in the water and kid, like you start, again, for those of us that didn't know you back then, you start to see how that all interplays with where you are today, even though a very different place. But you're like, oh yeah, we used to go to 15th Street. Oh, we went to Sano.
Yeah.
Oh, we used to camp a lot, outdoorsy.
Yeah.
Tenacious. That's super, super neat. Rad. Thank you. I can't wait to get back and go deeper to like later in life with your family and everything. But
Okay.
Let's go over to Jake. So Jake, we've had jokes over the years because I can't remember if you're Bakersfield or Fresno.
Yes.
Yes, baby. How do you mix the two up?
They seem the same if you grew up here. I'm a spoiled brat growing up at the beach.
Absolutely. I still hear it from friends all the time about Fresno. But Fresno is a great place to be raised, a great family place. Much like Chris, I was super blessed to be raised in a family with loving parents. I have 3 brothers, much different than Newport Beach. There's not bodies of water nearby, no big waves, flatland, a lot like Texas, it's like baseball, football. So that was my life growing up. So everything that we're involved in now is all new to me, which in a lot of ways I think is, it's been nice to have been naive to a lot of it because, I learn as I go, but we've gotten to meet some amazing people along the way. And our life in Fresno was great.
What sports did you play growing up?
Baseball, football. My real love was soccer when I was a young guy. But sports was, secondary to kind of what I did in the creative. I was always a kid that was drawing when I was 5, 6 years old, drawing Mickey Mouse, and that led into drawing all sorts of things throughout elementary school. And that led into just a passion for just visual creative. That was always like my backup. Like if sports wasn't happening, which come to find out in high school, it's just I realized I enjoyed it, but I really love visual art, and ended up checking out a few colleges, which that kind of led to our path here. I'm so stoked I did. I ended up going to an art school in LA called Otis, a small private college near LMU. And after my first year there, my mom called and was, hey, Jakey, we're going to go on a vacation. The boys, everybody's growing up. Like, these times are running out, and we all want to get away. We're going with a few families, and we're going to go on a cruise. And I was like, guys, this is my first year out of Fresno. I'm living in LA. I don't, I love my family, but I'm like, I wanted to live this life in LA and go have fun. And
where were you living in LA?
I was living in Marina Del Rey at the time.
Okay.
And I was stoked. I ended up going on this trip with my family because the reward in the end was I met this amazing group of girls, one being Steph, who's my wife today. And we met midway through the week, but I just remember, close your ears, Chris. I just remember seeing this beautiful, tall, 6 foot tall blonde girl, just beautiful. And we ended up chatting, super innocent, and everybody kind of in our group and their group. I think they were on their high school graduation trip, and I was there with my family. So we all exchanged.
And where were you?
We were in Mexico.
Got it.
So out on a big boat in Mexico. And we exchanged numbers and ended up, Steph and I connected within the next month and dated for 7 years. And I got married in 2008. So
got it. So in 2008. So Chris, let's talk about when you first met this guy. What did he think? Here's your beautiful daughter, innocent daughter, meets this guy in Mexico.
Do you remember this, Chris?
I do remember it. Laprelle's.
Yeah, Laprelle's.
So we had some great family friends, Christine and Kevin Laprelle, and they had a neat little house in the Rancho Cucamonga area, and they were going to have a barbecue, and that was the first time that we actually met.
Yeah.
Face to face, and I was pretty impressed right away. Actually,
I remember
he made a good first impression, and the fact that Stephanie said this is a really great guy, that said a lot.
Went a long way.
Because she's pretty savvy.
Yeah, she's rad. I remember walking in. She was, we got out of the car, we drove. She came up. She was living in Orange County. She came up to my place, and then we went from there because it was en route. And I drove, and we pulled up in front of the Laprelle's and got out, and naturally Steph grabs my hand. We're walking to the door, and I'm like, wait, I'm meeting your parents. And all of because there was a number of families there, right? It's like a backyard barbecue. I'm like,
15, 16
we're not going to hold hands right now. Like, I'm going in respect. I got to, we'll walk in, but I'm not there yet. Let me like figure your dad out first. So, but it was amazing. We walked in, and it was natural. Chris and Terry were super cool. And I don't know, that was all kind of a blur. I mean, those are exciting times, but there's so much going on here in college and dating.
Sure.
And, really, really special. But then we ended up, I do remember that Chris somewhere along the line let me know. I mean, this is, aerospace engineer. We're very right brain, left brain. I'm a creative. I was in art school, right? And I remember Chris letting me know, like, hey, and it wasn't right in the very beginning, but somewhere along the way, he let me know, nothing, Steph's, she's really dedicated to school. And so everything's, he let me know that the next step, if it's happening, would be after college. So I ended up proposing to Steph the day after she graduated college. We went up to Napa, and that was really rad. The Carlsons and my whole family were there. And really cool.
That's rad.
Well, we were, I don't know where Steph was. I think she might have been at Concordia at the time, but Jake said, hey, I want to come down. And I knew you were in Fresno at the time, I think.
I moved up to Fresno for a year between college and moving back down to Orange County.
So I hear that Jake's coming down from Fresno just to see Terry and myself. I kind of knew what was up. So we made it a little tough on him, but he did the right thing.
No,
it was the honorable thing.
You made it tough. Terry had all my favorite food laid out. Like, it was amazing.
That's such a great story. How fun.
Drove 4 hours down and solidified the deal.
Well, let me ask you this. So you with 3 brothers, I'm assuming that they saw Steph and they're like, oh, she's in.
Yeah.
Done deal.
No, Steph's easy to love.
But how did, when you first met Ben, his little sister, how did that go?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That is a good question. Ben was like Chris said, he was tough, he was confident, he was strong, he was big, 6'3", broad shoulders, the waterman. And Ben was always super cool to me. I mean, he wasn't easy and warm in the beginning. But I think in time, I think the one thing that we really had in common was our determination, our work ethic. And our views on things were very similar. But at the same time, we weren't from the same place and we didn't do the same things, but we found common ground in the fact that I was good to his sister, and we both were just driven work, our work ethic aligned. So I think there was always a mutual respect there, and he was always very cool. I'd come around, I hung out with he and his buddies a few times, and when they were living down, what street were they on, Chris? Here in Newport. But
so when you were already dating Steph, when you were dating Steph, Ben was already living in Newport?
Ben was living in Newport, yeah.
Got it.
So they were out of high school. Ben moved out, that next summer after graduation?
Yeah, so back to our story for a minute. So he went to junior college right out of high school, and then moved down to Newport pretty quickly. He was pretty independent. It wasn't like we booted him out or anything. It was just, that's what he wanted to do. He in his senior year, I believe, tried out for Newport Beach Lifeguards and made it. He was like some part of the 909 flock that came down, Chad Comeau and Chris Conway and all these guys. And so he started living in Newport pretty quickly and ended up going to UC Irvine to finish up his college and played water polo there. But he started working at Malarkey's, and so he got to know the crowd.
I mean, if you're a lifeguard in Newport and you're working, I mean, it's kind of the path of travel.
Right.
You're a lifeguard, you're either at Malarkey's or you're working at Malarkey's. I mean, it's been that way since I was a kid. Like, it's consistent. It's an Irish bar down on the peninsula. It hasn't changed at all in 40, 50 years. And but that is the path.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And other restaurants and bars in the area is not uncommon as well for lifeguards to be working on the beach during the day, working the bars at night, having a lot of fun all the way through.
He was a grinder. He always had 3 jobs. I remember we were just trying to, when Steph and I moved into town, we would try to get together with him, and we'd all make it happen. But Ben was, even though he was single at the time, probably had, he was out and about, but had 3 jobs at all times. Always saving his money to buy a house. Always working hard. Always had goals in mind. He was very, very focused and committed.
And let me start by saying that I didn't know Ben. Like so many in the community, we didn't know Ben. Again, we'll get to the story, but everything I've heard was exactly this. Super cool, super inspirational, loved to mentor others, was kind of the leader of that 909 pack, and then kind of became the leader of the whole pack. Like, just very instrumental in the community of lifeguarding in Newport at the time. But I always heard that, like, he was a grinder. He was passionate about working hard. It sounds like he was kind of tough. He was always super determined, right? Is that
correct? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I think, one thing that's important to talk about too is his values, his faith. I mean, we brought him up in a Christian home, very strong values, and like so many kids, as you get to become a junior, senior in high school, get into college, you start looking to, hey, what's life really about? And he started straying off and doing some things that Terry and I weren't so cool with, and that's at a point in time where he met Jake. And so I don't think it was Ben's best Ben at that point, but we started to see a turnaround, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But he was definitely doing his own thing, and probably not as quite tied into his faith as Terry and I would have liked, but he was living his life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would imagine living on the beach in Newport at what age? He's in his mid-20s. You're a stud.
Yeah, right.
He was a big surfer, big waterman. Like, so he was doing surf adventure. Like, he's going to Mexico and Tahiti, or Fiji or whatever. Big wave guy.
Puerto Escondido.
With some of our friends that are still,
absolutely.
Right? Some of the Skeeters of the world, the Spencer Purdy's. So he's working hard as a lifeguard and in the restaurants and whatever else he was doing at the same time. He's surfing. He's saving. Like, he was probably sleeping 4 hours a night, right?
Yeah.
And having a good time.
Having a good time.
That's
working hard. Finally saved up enough to buy his own house in Newport Beach. I mean, not many kids can say that.
No, that's super impressive.
Yeah.
And were you guys, as a result, so you're with Steph at this time, were you guys coming down to Newport on a regular basis? You said that you were like, it sounds like you had grown up coming down to Newport. But when Ben was living here, did that bring you guys down here a lot more?
Oh yeah, for sure. The whole thing with helping him to get the new house going, and we were renting sailboats at the time. We didn't have our own boat, so we would come and do that. Yeah, we just loved the beach, but never a thought of coming down and actually living there because we had pretty deep roots in Altaloma.
Got it. And what about you, Jake? Were you coming down? Were you and Steph coming down?
Yeah, so Steph and I, we were, after school, we got engaged, we got married, we moved to Ladera Ranch for a little bit. We were just like, I was doing a lot of freelance work, artwork, creative, branding, marketing, and I just needed a garage to work out of, and we found a little spot in Ladera. I don't know why we chose that. It was like our own new little place, and we were there for a short time and then slowly made our way up to Newport. So we moved to Newport Beach in January of 2014. And actually that was the same year that Ben had his final rescue 6 months later. So
I didn't realize that you had moved here right before. So
right
you guys
before.
were coming here one way or the other.
Yeah, we were here. We were already here, but we knew that we loved this place. We didn't know yet where our place in the bigger perspective was going to be. But we had a little life. We were renting a little cottage in CDM and had 2 young boys. Life was good. We were just Brody was in my older son. Steph and I have 2 boys, 14 and 12. Brody and Bronson, and Brody had just started school at Harborview Elementary, so I think he's in kindergarten when all this happened. And so life was, we were off to a fun little start in our family life.
And what were you doing career-wise? You were in the art.
Career-wise, I was working for a company doing marketing work. So again, always kind of visual branding work, but like a private label branding company, marketing company.
And it'll come back in conversation about that skill set that you possess has been formative in the next chapter, which is incredible what you've been able to do with that, and we'll talk about it. So it's 2014. You guys have moved down here. You guys are coming back and forth. Can you guys tell the story of what happened?
Yeah. So Terry's.
And we don't have to go deep.
No, that's fine. So Terry's parents had a place up in Yosemite Valley, actually within the park boundary. It's an amazing place, Yosemite West. Long-time family home, and we would go up there every 4th of July. We spent a lot of time up in Yosemite, but every 4th of July, that was kind of our big thing. We'd rent a pontoon boat on Bass Lake and do a lot of hiking over the 4th of July. And, Ben and Steph were into that for the first 10 years or so, and then Ben started doing the beach thing, and it was hard to get him there. So 2014, we were up there, just had the 4th of July celebration, and it was July 6th, and received a phone call at about 5:15 or so from a number we didn't recognize, and it was Lifeguard Captain Jim Turner, who I had never met. And he delivered the news that Ben had gone out on a rescue, and they hadn't found him yet. And yeah, that's the phone call no parent wants to get, for sure. And at that point, I pretty much knew that there wasn't much hope because, it had been like 10 or 15 minutes, and they were pretty quick getting to us, but knew there wasn't too much hope. But I just remember being shocked because, as you mentioned, he was a big surfer, water polo player. Like, what?
15-year lifeguard at that point,
yes,
working on the boats, which is a
right.
pretty elite level job.
Right, really seasoned waterman. So it was like, what? Wow. And of course, the shock and the emotions. And yeah, that was a tough drive coming home that night. Oh my gosh. So we got home. We had some friends waiting for us, great friends. And then Monday, we were in lifeguard headquarters in the training room, surrounded by a bunch of people I didn't know. because we knew, some of his friends, but we didn't know leadership. And Rob Williams was the chief at that point, and I didn't know Rob. And so, at any rate, all of a sudden we find ourselves in planning a service for Benjamin, and it was just a very crazy time. Fortunately, we had some really great friends. The Beck and Dams came. They came and supported us and helped us put planning together and such. And it was just, at that point, it was a whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And as a member of the community, and as I said earlier, I didn't know Ben, but I've grown up in the water here. I know a lot of the lifeguards. I grew up guarding for a year. So I was on the other side of it. I didn't know Ben, but as a community member, it stopped. It was like the clocks stopped. Everybody, the whole community was so galvanized behind it, and it really hasn't stopped, which has been unbelievable. We'll talk a lot about that. But at that time, it was just one of those things. It was this monumental thing. I didn't know you guys at the time, but the whole community was so passionately engaged in what was going on.
Yeah.
And the paddle out was unlike anything I think anybody's ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, the paddle out. I'd never even heard of those. I mean, I'm an inlander, right? I had never.
Or you were at the time. You were, yes.
I was, and I had never heard of it. And what are we doing? And so that had to be explained. But I remember that morning coming down. We wanted to have time of prayer with our good friends, so we met at Lifeguard headquarters. We had a great time of prayer, and I just remember looking around and seeing just all these people. Just like I was thinking, this is going to be 40 or 50.
No idea.
We had no idea, and I just see people carrying their boards, and it was pretty overwhelming. To see the turnout and to see the emotions that was really. What impressions did you have of that day, Jake?
That whole week, I think, and this has been kind of my position in it, is that we all knew and loved Ben, but like as their son, right? I knew what an impact and on Steph too. I mean, that's it. How heavy, and in some ways I was like a piece removed. So I remember that whole week the Laprelles came to your house, the same group,
stayed with us,
same couple that was there when we first met, stayed with you. They were doing everything around the house, ordering food, making food, doing everything that you guys at that point. You're mentally, it's you're in shock. You're at a loss. And I remember before the paddle out, you and I drove down and we did somebody invited us to do the pier swim with the pier club. Right. And that was something that Ben would do every Wednesday, and there's a group that's still doing it every week. Dougie Mann and those cats.
I had no idea that he was part of that.
Yeah, and so he and Ross Sinclair, I remember seeing pictures of them and Dougie, and they did it a few times, and so that was something that happened like the next, this is a few days later. Let's see, it happened on a Sunday, and we came down Wednesday. You and I came, and I mean, Fresno guy, like I'm like, we're getting in the ocean, we're doing this for Ben, like it's cold, but
fortunately it was a super low tide.
It's super low tide. You could walk halfway out the end of the pier.
So we survived it.
We survived it, and but that was really special. And I think at that point I realized what an impact. I mean, the loss is greater than anything, and yet when it affects a whole community, like there was I don't know how many people were at that pier swim. They usually have like a dozen people that do it on the weekly, and there was like 50 or 60 people there. And then the build up to the following weekend when the paddle out was, where I don't know, 2,500 people were there. It was it was very moving, very powerful, and you started to sense the impact it had on the community at that point.
Yeah, well, it really did, and thank you for sharing that. I know it's still, it'll never not be hard to share that, so thank you. One of the quotes that has stuck with me, I had Spencer Purdy in here. We love Spence, and we'll talk about him, and Ben did go in just a minute, but one of the quotes that he said in a different format when he and I were working together on a video, he said, and I'm sure everybody's heard it now, but it's the thing I think about all the time. And Spencer is a stud athlete, incredible waterman, big wave, long distance ocean paddler, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, hearing that Ben died was like hearing that Superman died. Like that's the impact it had on him, a friend of his and somebody that he was mentored by Ben. And that comment, that quote, I think says so much.
It kind of paints a picture of who Ben was.
It does, 100%. Yeah. So really powerful. And again, let me just say this from me, and I think I speak for the community, the way that your family navigated that and continues to navigate it with grace and smiles and happiness and the good things that have come from such a tragedy has been incredible. And that's what we're going to get into and talk about the Ben Carlson Foundation and everything that happened on the back of his final rescue. So again, I get chicken skin, and I never even knew him, and that's how powerful of an impact he's had, I think, on the community in total. And here we are on Junior Guard Day 2 of 2024 and the new lifeguard building, or junior lifeguard building. So we're going to talk about all that now and go into what has transpired because of you two and many others since since his last rescue. Okay.
One other story before we get into that, if you don't mind.
No.
So, I talked about faith and he was kind of drifting a bit. The cool thing for Terry and myself and for Stephanie too, and I'm sure for Jake, one of the really cool things that happened is January of that year, of 2014, we started to see a transition in Ben. And really starting to get really deep into family again. And we could tell, this guy he's a man of faith. He's getting it back together. And there was a really cool and fun and something I'll always remember in the small cottage they lived in Larkspur. Jake and Steph had us over for a barbecue, and the boys were out in front, small lawn. They were playing soccer back and forth to Ben, and Ben's in board shorts and a t-shirt, and somebody scored on him, and he said, "Okay, that's it." He rips his shirt off.
Yeah, mind you, he's playing against his nephews on a little yard in CDM.
And his nephews were how old at the time? Like 1 and 3 or 2
and 5.
3 and 5, yeah. Yeah.
And he said, "That's it. You guys are in trouble." And he
went to town and he scored and he took his shirt off and he whipped it around his head and hilarious.
Yeah, that was great. That's a great last memory.
Getting to spend that last 6 months with him. I think he, as siblings do, you kind of go in your own direction, and being who Ben was, traveling the world and big wave surfing, and then coming back, and then all of a sudden having family that now lives in his town. I thought was very cool. He and Steph got to reconnect. He would come over to our place and they'd walk to Big Corona all the time together and just have these conversations, these talks, whether he's dealing with work or, his whoever he's dating at the time, conversations of faith, where Steph was huge, instrumental. And and I've talked to a couple other friends, Chaz Leeper being one of them, but, life is really, it's hard to put it into perspective, but you didn't know at the time that, we had this timeline, right? And there were 6 months. Steph and I remember leaving. We go to Mariners Church. I remember leaving church, and Steph would text Ben, notes that she had taken from church. And I'm like, honey, if he wants to come, he'll come. We'll invite him, But they'd have these deep conversations, and little did we know that there was time was running out, and so they had these great conversations about faith and why that matters to us is in our Christian faith is eternity, right? And knowing that how Ben was living so fast and loving his life, at the same time, some realities of slowing down and knowing that God is out there. And it was really special that they connected on so many levels, but especially that, knowing that 6 months out would be his last rescue.
Well, so fortuitous that you guys moved down, just happened to move down 6 months before and spent all this quality time together. And that's why I was asking how much time you spent down here. So, you always wondered, I talk about it with my wife. Like, you never know. So live every
Right.
day.
Never
And
know.
it's so great that you guys got that
sure.
opportunity to spend all that time together. So
Yeah.
We
it's
got
awesome.
we got the opportunity to like just come back together
Yeah.
just before.
Yep. Have
Yeah,
those times.
it's-
In fact, we had him over. Ben and Brody share, my older son,
And my oldest son.
and your son,
all
right?
the same birthday.
All
Wild.
July 2nd. So
Really, I did not know
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Gianni too.
Crazy.
Gianni. So we got to have him over for a barbecue on July 2nd, 4 days before the 6th, and got to have a special time with him then too. You know, so until the end, we had these, you know, these really special moments.
Rad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's
There's
turn the
that.
page.
Let's turn the page.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I'll get myself back together.
Yes.
here.
Dab your makeup, Chris. Well,
Makeup.
listen, what did happen immediately was the embrace of the community. I mean, and so let's talk about after that initial week. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of engagement. There's people that want to support. People are coming out of the woodwork to what can we do? Can you guys talk about the formation of like what happened next? That pivot.
You go ahead and feel free to run. I have a lot on that because that would go for it.
Well, I'll try, and you can fill in the
Yeah.
blanks. But what I remember is just I was in touch with Gary Conwell, who was on the boat day of Ben's accident, and
runs the junior guard program
Today.
today,
Newport
yeah,
Beach today.
right. We've had really a great relationship with Gary since that day, and he was getting in contact with me because most of the funds that were coming from the community were coming into. They had some kind of fund set up, and like the money was big. It was 5 digits and growing, and all of a sudden we realized, hey, we've got to do something of meaning with this. What is it going to be? And so within a few weeks, we started talking about, okay, we've got to put a foundation together. And fortunately, I had developed some businesses during my lifetime, so I had a chance to kind of put things together. Okay, what do we want to do? What are our objectives going to be? And who's going to be on the board? And so most of it was lifeguards that he knew and friends, and then Jake and myself, old buddies from Alta Loma. And yeah, we started on our way.
Yeah. I remember, so Ben worked in restaurants, and there was first of all, there was a GoFundMe set up in town that I think there was 15 grand that had come in overnight for that. And then there was a couple of checks that came in from beverage companies, so 10,000, another 10,000. All of a sudden there was $30,000, $35,000. And that's when I think we realized, 2 weeks in, like, what is this? And what there's a responsibility all of a sudden that like you're dealing, but then what is this money for? And what do you do with that? And how do you make, positivity out of something so negative and so heavy? And that's when the foundation formed. I remember Chris and I, we walked from our place in CDM to the place, and we met with a few people, 5 people or so,
Yeah.
buddies, and like Chris said, friends from Alta Loma, and a couple lifeguards, and that's when the foundation was formed. And that was like within a month, I think, of everything happening. And then, it was all kind of a blur at that point.
What were the
beyond.
initial conversations? So we have this responsibility. We have these funds. We have this responsibility. The vehicle should be a foundation.
Yeah. Mhm.
But right out of the gate, did you talk about what that foundation would do, or is it just a way to steward the money and then figure out how to, like, where we'll apply it later?
Well, one of the things that happened fairly early on, within 3 weeks or so, Danny Schmitz, one of his high school buddies and one of the original board members, said, Mr. Carlson, he always calls me Mr. C, but we need to erect a statue.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
He actually called me when I was at you guys' house with the lapels,
yeah.
very early, and I was like, same thing. He's like, Ben died a hero. He deserves a statue. And everybody at the time was like, what? Like, of course.
Just at that point,
it's not a bad, like, of course, sure. But like, everybody's just dealing, And I think as friends, these guys were like,
passionate, like let's go.
Passionate. Let's do something epic for Ben. This is amazing. And I think it took the family a minute to like wrap our heads around all of that. But that really was a big kickoff for everything in the foundation. We did talk about doing scholarships in the beginning,
right.
But simultaneously there was like a big community movement all of a sudden that everyone's talking about a statue. And
we came up with the 4 S's, right?
Yeah. Scholarship, safety, statue, and stoke. And so like, and again, I think I credit Chris for like, he's built businesses before. And then we had lifeguards involved. We had the passion from the friends back home, and then we had some marketing, and so that all kind of came together, and we formed a foundation. I think we built it all out early on.
And let me just tap real quickly there. So early on, we talked about you being an engineer, but you've gone on to be a consultant for many, many years. So this was in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And just so people go, when you say built businesses, like your career had pivoted a bit, so you
Correct.
really set up well to
right.
at least be in
20 years ago, I went from just engineering and in aerospace to consulting, helping businesses thrive.
Got it. And it worked out well here too. I mean, it was good to have the skill sets. And so speaking of skill sets, the statue comes up as one of the 4 S's, and there's this guy that happens to be a graphic designer in the family and in the house. So what was the statue process like?
So I remember Danny Schmitz and I had some conversations, and ultimately it wasn't the intent for me to do the statue. It was more so that from the family's perspective, I just want to oversee and make sure that we're choosing a great sculptor and that it's going to look good, and that those things mattered from a visual standpoint. That's the one I felt like I could help offer that, and at least steward that through to find the right artist and to get it done. And so somewhere early on, just with the idea of people like, what is it going to be? What's it going to look like? And I just being creative, drew out something like, here's what we're going to go for. And somehow that got into the OC register. And then we were calling around. Danny had been calling some people. I had been calling some people. But Steph and I, at one point, we were on vacation up in Carmel, and I remember seeing this amazing figurative artist. He had a gallery there, and his name is Richard McDonald. And Richard McDonald, when I looked him up, come to find out, he also had...
In Laguna, is that right?
Yep, a rad spot.
All like the
Dawson Cole.
dancers and incredible stuff. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
he had a place in Laguna, and so I had reached out to Dawson Cole, that's the name of their gallery in Laguna, and his assistant took my information, and I got a call back from Richard Jr., Rich, and so the sculptor's son, and I think he's grown. He actually had a kid in the junior lifeguard program in Laguna, and he's like, hey, I've heard about this project. I know what it is. Who did that? Did you do that? My name was under the rendering in the OC register, and he's like, did you do that? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, why are you reaching out to my dad? I think you should do this piece.
He's the one that told you
He's the one that told me. Wow. And he's like, you should do that. And I said,
You're like, hold on, what?
I'm not a sculptor. I went to, branding and design, but that's totally different than sculpting. And he said, well, if you did that in some sort of software format, which I did, he said, I want to introduce you to some people and some things, and I think that you should do this piece. So Rich introduced me to a guy named Javier in Santa Ana that's got a company called Advanced Digital Manufacturing, ADM. And ADM was this epic warehouse that had these huge machines that were cutting out 3D rendering out like huge blocks of foam. So they would take an art file from you, Photoshop digital file, but in this case, it was taken from what's called Zbrush application. Zbrush is much like Photoshop, or it's actually like AutoCAD for architects, but it was for sculptors. And so you could render on screen almost like clay, and then sculpt. And it would output millions of polygons that would then be rendered by these incredible machines. And so they introduced me to that software, and I learned the software in a few weeks, actually, on YouTube.
Wow.
And learned the software and worked very closely with Javier and his team at Advanced Digital Manufacturing simultaneously. The community was completely behind the idea, and all the friends and family were pushing, and we were fundraising. again, meeting people along the way.
And by the way, he's doing this while running our social media platform, which was going crazy.
Sure.
He's trying to launch his own personal career, which basically got put on hold for 3 or 4 years. So amazing.
We had a lot going on. Carlsons weren't here yet, so I just, that was like a sense of responsibility that I just felt. We lived near City Hall at the time, so I was at City Hall often working with the Public Works Department, getting to know people in council, trying to figure out how do you maneuver this type of thing. We're going to break ground. We have to find a location. You got to deal with Coastal Commission. You've got to get it all fundraised, designed, and approved by the city. I mean, there were so many components. Again, Steph and I are living in this little tear-down cottage in CDM right behind Zinc on Larkspur, and just doing life and juggling. That it was a really heavy time of life, but a special time of life looking back at it now. I don't know how, it just, that's where I think we realized what an amazing community we have. Insert people like John Wortman. Unbelievable. John and Ann Wortman. We met John Wortman at, they renamed Lifeguard headquarters after Ben. And I think that was the next year. Was that 2015?
Yeah, it was.
So we're sitting outside of the building. They had done a ceremony, pulled the sign down, the Benjamin Maywood Carlson Lifeguard headquarters. He's named after Chris. That was really special. And so we're just kind of in the crowd afterwards, hugging and shaking hands and looking and thinking, wow, this is epic. He'd be, remove the heaviness on a lighter side. Ben would be stoked. He'd be dancing and laughing.
He always wanted to get in the Surfer
Hilarious.
magazine.
Yeah, this is it. Really special.
Wow.
So, but that day I remember one of our now board members and an early board member, John Moore, a lifeguard, brought a guy over and he said, "Hey Jake, this guy, I want to introduce you to him, and he's he wants to help us out." And I was like, "Great. What do you want? Hi, how are you?" Met John Wortman, and he says, "Hey, you don't know me. I'm sure you guys are meeting a lot of strangers, but I don't want anything. I just want to help you guys, and you don't have to do any work." And I was like, who is this angel? Who is this guy? And John, 2 weeks later, threw an event for us at what was 333 at the time.
Restaurant on the Bay.
And we pulled up that night, and he just told us to be there, and it was going to be a small fundraiser, and he's like, but once that event is done, then we're going to do something epic, and that'll be at the Bay Club, and you guys don't have to do anything. And a year into all this, it's so heavy emotionally, physically, mentally, like there's a lot going on. So to have somebody like that inserted that knows everybody in the community and just wants to help you drive towards a goal with a huge heart and no strings attached, it was like, this guy's incredible. Since he's been a great friend ever since. But we threw an event. He threw the event at 333 and had buckets of cash. I remember he brought people in buckets of cash, like just telling people how special this is. And it was at the time to fund the statue. And then
we were short a significant amount at that point.
Yeah, it was going to cost, I think, total, and this is outside of our artist fees, we're looking at like $200,000. And so that's where, again, me doing it and that not being a cost was a save. And then having people, so that money went towards advanced digital manufacturing, and then to the welding factory in the end in Santa Barbara that put that all together and delivered it down. So pretty epic to have met so many great people. But John has been instrumental to us ever since in introducing us to folks that, local philanthropists that care about the community and whose life doesn't the junior guard community touch or our lifeguards touch. And this really, I think Ben's story shines such a light on the respect that lifeguards deserve, have always deserved, but maybe more so now than ever, they're seeing what they deserve. And, in the beginning, we were just calling them humble heroes, because I think the weekend that Ben made his final rescue, there was 530 rescues that weekend. I mean, a lot. You get a beautiful sunny day with waves pumping mid-July. You get everybody pouring into town, and not everybody is equipped and ready for the ocean, especially a day like that.
No, and that day was unlike almost any other day that I can remember in Newport Beach in the ocean, almost ever. And right there, not 100 feet from the Benjamin M. Carlson Lifeguard headquarters, is the Ben Carlson statue, which is stunning, Jake. It is unbelievable.
Thank you.
It is unbelievable. And I was thinking about it the other day. I think there's only like, I may be missing one or two, but there's only like 4 statues of people that I can think of in our community. One is John Wayne at the airport, which is not in Newport Beach, but it's a big, I mean, it's John Wayne. The second is the Marine Memorial statue up at Castaway Park overlooking the bay. The third is, I think, Ronald Reagan at Civic Park. And the fourth is Ben Carlson at Newport Pier, looking out over the ocean. And we'll definitely share photos of it. It's unbelievable. So, A, congratulations on getting it done. B, spectacular work. And it's so great that you were not only pushed to do it, but that you had the capacity and the knowledge and the desire to do it. And how special is that? That's a Ben legacy, but it's also a Jake legacy and a Carlson family legacy and Newport Beach legacy. It's stunning. And then the fact that it stands right next to the Newport Pier, which is one of the most historic history part. That was McFadden Wharf, earliest part of Newport Beach. Everything about it. But the final thing, and let me just say this, and then we'll turn back over to you.
That's okay.
The other thing is the fact that you were able to get it done and push through, and the fact that you were spending time with the city council, city public works, the coastal commission. There are very, 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 very few things that get pushed through of that magnitude. And the only reason was because of who Ben was, the circumstance, and the engagement and embrace of the community, right?
Absolutely.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I don't think that, it was such a moment, not only in Ben's world and who he was and the respect that he had, but in the community. I think that the community felt a responsibility to do something and give back. I mean, here Ben saved a man's life, sacrificed his life, and that had a huge impact on the community. And I also can't tell you how many people we've met since that were there that day. I mean, I know so many people, and then a lot of people that maybe aren't like normal beachgoers that happen to be there that day. But again, like a huge light shined on Ben and his story, and having the support from the community, city council. It was a 2-year process from July 2014 until July 6, 2016, when we unveiled the statue. So in 2 years, a lot took place. But again, that's when I think we really, realized that the community had embraced the foundation, the family. It was really special. So it's been a partnership with us in the city the whole time.
Well, and the momentum has not stopped with the statue. Like that was just step one or one of them.
Yeah.
So so it keeps going. So we get the statue, or you guys, the statue's up, the presentation, but the momentum is going.
Right.
Can you talk about what happened next? More with the foundation, where I'm imagining at this point more clarity on the behalf of the board and of the foundation. What are we going to do? We have more money and we have more engagement. We have this opportunity. What happens next?
Well, we all took a deep cleansing breath for sure.
I would imagine.
Did we go off to Hawaii
the next day?
Good.
Yeah. And we talk about so many incredible people that have come alongside of us along the way. I think of
Punker.
Laird, Punker, Pat
Towersy.
Bob Hurley,
helping
us out early on with merchandise. Laird Hayes,
what a legend. Laird actually. So Laird, you should tell the Green Bay story, and then I'll tell the statue story.
Yeah. So oh boy, I don't know what year it was. Probably 2012. I'm a huge Packer fan. We have roots in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and my grandfather and my dad, they were big Packer.
Does that make you a cheesehead?
It does. It does. And you will find pictures of Ben wearing a cheesehead.
Oh, got it.
So 2 of his buddies, Fuzzy and Skeeter, he and Ben and myself, we went to Lambeau on a really cold trip and watched the Packers. And then, so after Ben's accident, we get this communication from a guy I'd never met, Laird Hayes, who happened to be a side judge in the NFL. And he said, I don't know you, but we really want to do something for you. The NFL wants to do something for you. So we ended up putting together this incredible trip to Lambeau Field for many of the board members.
Yeah.
Jake and Stephanie wasn't able to go because the kids were really small. Terry, and we just had it was an amazing 24 hours. Lambeau Field.
Amazing. Laird was at the service. Laird was in the crowd, and his son Andy is a lifeguard, still currently today. And if there was an upside to that day, a highlight moment that was a little bit lighter, where people smiled in the crowd. One, it kicked off with Chief at the time, Rob Williams, he was an Angels fan. Ben was a Dodgers fan. And Chief got up and spoke and pulls out the Dodger hat and puts it on. So everybody knew how much Ben loved the Dodgers. So all his buddies are, loving that. And then another key moment was how much he loved the Packers. So Laird Hayes being in the crowd, being an NFL sideline judge, going, okay, what can I do for this family? I think he reached out 2 weeks later, sent an email and said, if you guys can get yourselves back to Lambeau, I'm going to show you a day you'll never forget. And the only tough part is Steph was home with the boys. She didn't get to go because it was a beautifully cold day in Lambeau. Amazing.
Isn't it always cold there?
I've actually been to the game, the opening day, and it was beautiful. Oh. Yeah, it was beautiful. But I
think there was about a half inch of ice on our benches where we were sitting for that game.
For sure.
Unbelievable. But carry on about after the game.
Oh my gosh. So after the game, Laird says, hey, meet us at this door. And so we go up there and we go into kind of like a media room. And he said, okay, come down this hall. And we walk down this long hall toward you can see the Packer locker room. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Well, we're in a dark hallway. You see one light and you hear two voices laughing and chuckling.
Yeah. And we turn the corner and there's Aaron Rodgers. And he hung out with us for 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Yeah. He was already changed. He'd done press and everything, and he was changed into his day clothes. And we all huddled into this room, and he just hung out and chatted with us. And we
had a couple of guys from Cal, and so they got to talk about that kind of stuff.
Fuzzy from Cal.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the fun moments too. I mean, first of all, a highlight of that was that I think that was the first time I had seen Terry smile since everything with Ben, and that was probably November. Right, so months had gone by, but what a moment, because I think it was on the wake of Skeeter trying to take a selfie with Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers was like, "No, bro, I don't take selfies." And we have a photo of Skeeter like pulling his phone back, and everybody else is taking their phones out. We're like, "Oh yeah, no photos here." We did get photos, but no selfies. What an epic day, though. That was incredible. And they crushed the Eagles that day.
Yeah, they did.
And another fun little story in there is Chris Conway, a board member buddy, he and I, we were on a fantasy football team, and Aaron Rodgers was my quarterback, and he crushed the Eagles. So I got to rub it into Conway all day, and then also tell Rodgers after the game about. Yeah, we had a great time. But Laird Hayes, he's been instrumental as well.
He's been a great.
He also chose the location of the statue. We would meet when we were getting all this going. A lot had to do with knowing people in the city and getting things done, and council and city planners. And so Laird kind of had the entree for us and was introducing us to people. And I'm a huge believer that you can get so much done with a one-on-one conversation. We know this, sitting down over coffee, the things that you can get done together in one-on-ones are huge. And so Laird and I actually, we were meeting, we'd have coffee at right there at McFadden Square. And one day when we were trying to find the location, we were choosing between the Newport Pier and the Balboa Pier, and like what would be more meaningful. And there was two different parties that were pushing for both, because we knew in time that it's a special piece. And Laird actually had pointed out in McFadden Square at the time, before the statue was there was like a big block right in the center of things, and all arrows, like all design in the ground, led to that. Come to find out, Laird had pointed that out to us. Come to find out, there was power like wired there years ago when the city like poured the concrete. I mean, it was like wired with power for something someday, maybe a concert hall, maybe you play music out there, but you needed some sort of power. Well, come to find out, we put the statue there, and when we were digging through and finalizing plans, we realized that and how cool that is, because that's where all the lighting runs, and it saved some hassle. It was already there, ready for Ben's statue in some sense.
And just for anybody that's not familiar with Newport, we have two piers. Balboa Pier, that's where the junior lifeguard program is. And the Newport Pier, that's where lifeguard headquarters is, named after Ben. And that's where McFadden Square is. And that's where, if you've ever been here, that's where the Dory Fleet Beach is. And it's kind of the historic part of town.
Yeah.
But that is iconic. It's right at the Blackie surf spot. Like that is the heart of the beach in Newport Beach right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, again, it's stunning. And when you see the picture of it, you see Ben looking out forever over the ocean, which is incredible. So again, giant kudos.
Thank you.
Let's keep talking. I think the Laird Hayes example and the John Wortman examples are just two of so many people that have come out and are still working in support. And again, the community and the city, and there's been so much wind in the sails as far as keeping this going, and the foundation is more vibrant and strong than ever. Let's talk about what the foundation is doing and does, and if you want to talk about the evolution of it.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible organization.
So one of the first things we did, we knew water safety was going to be a big part of that, and so one of the first things we did, we were kind of brainstorming what should we do in this water safety space, and there's two big things that came of that. One was, first we looked for a transponder. We wanted to put could we put a transponder on lifeguards and maybe even beachgoers, so that if something that happened to Ben happened to somebody else, we could find these people very quickly. Yeah. Because if Ben had a transponder on, they could have just jumped in, grabbed him, and brought him up. So we worked pretty hard. I had a good friend, Fred Lukow, who was chief engineer at Raytheon. I'd worked with Fred for a long time in aerospace, and we talked about different transponders, and eventually we ended up working with this group in this area that does black box for aircraft, the transponders for those. When an aircraft goes down, goes to the bottom of the ocean, these transponders tell people where it's at. So we started with that technology, and we did some testing. Rob Williams was still chief, and he let us do some testing out there, and with some really positive results, until we got into the surf line in aerated water, and then it just.
Oh, interesting.
So we put a pretty good effort into that. It didn't work out. If anybody out there knows new technologies, we're open to hearing about it. But
Apple's AirTags won't work.
I don't think so. Yeah, good thought though. Then the other thing that happened, and it's just amazing how just life happens, and to me it's God putting things together. And 2 years before Ben's accident, we had a really good friend, Brian Goodwin, who was just messing around in the surf. He's 17 years old. Great friends of ours, Lewis and Terry Goodwin, are Brian's parents, and he dove in, C4 sever.
So broke his neck. Seriously. And so quadriplegic.
And during the course of things, Will Kuhn, I'm not sure if you know Will Kuhn, but Will is a Huntington guard, really got into data, was working Hoag Hospital, Project Wipeout. Will and I started talking about, hey, don't we have more data on these spinal cord injuries? And he introduced me to the Project Wipeout, and said, yeah, data is a big issue, not only for spinal cords, but drowning. And so fast forward 2 or 3 years, I come across Will again, and we start talking about what can we do in this water safety space? Because unfortunately, there's so many families that are similar to ours that have lost kids in very tragic ways, whether it's a pool, an ocean drowning. There are just a lot of families and a lot of these foundations that are trying to make their way and trying to do something positive, just as we were. And then we also came across a lot of agencies, county agencies, local agencies that were trying to do things to promote water safety. And between John Moore, Will Kuhn, Rob Williams, Jen Fox, and myself, we started realizing that, hey, if we could do something to align the efforts. So we have got all these velocity vectors going, everybody's trying to do something. But if we could come together and put it into one velocity vector where we're really pushing water safety, that would be fantastic. So we ended up designing the 2018 Water Safety Summit. At that point, it was called the Southern California Water Safety Summit. The idea, let's just bring these people together in a room and see what we can do to promote water safety within Southern California area. And we weren't sure if it was going to be a one and done, but it turned out to be very successful. And we had people come from all over the state and said, we've got to continue to do this. So that's been one of the big things that we've done. And the way that's evolved has been incredible, and a lot of it under the guidance of Rob Williams.
So let me stop there real quick.
Yeah.
So you've said a bunch of names that I think that's important to shine a light on. So
Okay.
Rob Williams was the chief when this was all going down.
Correct.
Rob has since retired, but he serves on the board of directors for the Ben Carlson Foundation.
Correct.
You mentioned Jen Fox and John Moore, both on the board of advisors.
Correct.
You mentioned, also I just want to clarify, you've mentioned Skeeter and Fuzzy. I think anybody out there's going, Skeeter and Fuzzy, are those their dogs? Skeeter Leaper is captain, lifeguard captain in Newport Beach.
Yeah.
I don't know Fuzzy though.
Justin-
And Skeeter's also on the board of advisors.
Justin
for the-
Fuzz not. So Justin, Skeeter, Ben, they did a lot of these big surfing trips together. Yeah. So they hung out a lot.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, so Fuzzy's real name or full name is?
Justin Fuzznot.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought everybody would want to get some clarity because we've
Yeah.
said some of the same names. But again, a lot of these people still continue to serve actively on the board
Absolutely.
for the Ben
Right.
Carlson Foundation,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
great.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's
Again,
good.
it's not just 12 of us listening, I hope. I think there's a lot more out there, especially. And you actually mentioned Will Kuhn, is Dr. Will Kuhn, PhD in water safety. And he was just recently interviewed, ironically here, on the Lifeguard Project podcast with Drosko Bogdanovich, who works with and alongside the Ben Carlson Foundation. I interviewed him. He was sitting right here. So there's a lot of crossover. But if you want to learn about Will Kuhn, Dr. Will Kuhn, who's so impressive, you would find him on the Lifeguard Project podcast with Drosko.
Yes.
Lots of again, I said it, this is not a lifeguard podcast. It's not a surfing or a paddling podcast. It's storytelling, but there's a lot of crossover in this world.
It's great, and Drosko did a great job of bringing out the hard work that Will did during his PhD. So yeah, it's a fantastic podcast to watch. So we were preparing for the next summit, and COVID happened, and we had to cancel. In the meantime, we realized that, hey, this has really got legs, and it's probably bigger than what we can do. And then we came across the Zach Foundation. This is another foundation that's formed on the East Coast as a result of a child drowning in a pool, ill-designed pool drain. And we brought funds together and actually spawned another 501c3 called the California Water Safety Coalition, with a thought that, okay, this 501c3 is now going to really take the ball and move this forward in the state of California. And since then, I served on that board for a while. Rob served as president of that board and still on that board. But they've just developed the California Water Safety Strategy, which is an incredible guide put together for the state of California to help people guide all aspects of water safety in the state of California. It's pretty remarkable. And so that's been going on as well. And then recently we just had the 2024 Water Safety Summit. So it's been really, really great watching that grow. So that's a big part of water safety. We're also, do you want to talk about global outreach? Or
Yeah,
do you want me to
let's
keep
go
going with
through
Global-
the way I think. Let's go through all the
Okay.
things or all the tentacles that the Ben Carlson Foundation is involved in, and then we'll talk about some of the fundraising aspects.
Some of it. So since the beginning, we'll get to global outreach. It's a little bit newer in the last few years to us, but since the very beginning, Jen Fox has been instrumental. Like, she's been incredible. She was a lifeguard, a friend of Ben's, is an educator. She has endless energy. I don't know how she does it, married young daughter, but she does so much for the foundation, but was...
Works at Newport Harbor High School as well.
Harbor, yeah. And was in the very beginning, she set up our whole scholarship platform, really, where it was a national outreach from the marketing of getting the word out to what the criteria is, to how to receive applications, how to, we worked together to get it up on the website and like how to review everything. Then we built an internal team with a few board members, Chris being one of them, Chad Camo, Gary Conwell, and Jen Fox. The four of them for years have been reading just all these scholarship applications, and we've had anywhere from 200 to 400 at times, but
from all over the country.
Scholarship recipients currently, it used to be $10,000 per scholarship recipient, and that $10,000 would go directly towards their further education in college. We've met some amazing kids, some that are just, at times we have our scholarship dinners, and I sit back and I'm like, how old am I, and what am I doing with my life? These kids are unbelievable, and if you ever have concerns about the future, it's in good hands with some of these kids. They're amazing. Chet Clark last summer, I put a local Newport Harbor kid. What a young legend. His story is incredible. It's stories like Chet, to get a kid have a kid get up and so selflessly accept this award. I saw him last week at the JG building unveiling, and he's like, it's changed my life. And I'm like, that's incredible. I think it's the impact that Ben's story has had in this town and the platform it serves to bring attention to things and to people like Chet Clark and other young recipients that just empower them to go on and change the world and do awesome things. So huge credit to Jen Fox, though, on our board. She selflessly, tirelessly serves our board. She's got so many plates spinning, and she does it all so well, and we're so grateful to Jen. But yeah, we've to this date, Chris, over $400,000 we've given in scholarships, which is very cool, and that continues to grow. And we've got our next scholarship dinner coming up at VEA on July 12th. So it's rad to see the community fill out. It's turned into the size of a small wedding. 250 people, and put on by the foundation, and it grows every year, and it's so inspiring to see 3 or 4 this year, 4 recipients come in and receive their awards, and really special.
And it also reinforces that ongoing engagement with the community, because the people that are there, you've got city council, you've got the hitters. Everybody comes out, and it is both lovely and inspiring for the reasons that you just mentioned, Jake. Like, it's an incredible event, and it gives you a lot of pride, again, in the lifeguard service all over the country and what the organization does and the aspirations of it. It's really wonderful. So kudos to you guys. I think that we could go on and on about all the other things, and I think it's important, and maybe we'll get back to it real quick, but as far as the other things that the Ben Carlson Foundation fundraises for or supports, as far as international underserved lifeguard organizations in Mexico and other places. They work with the Big Wave, BRAG, Big Wave
Risk Assessment,
which is all about water safety in big ocean conditions. Really incredible. But I think what I'd like to focus on is our local, the biggest fundraising campaign of the Ben Carlson Foundation is what?
Is the Ben Did Go.
What's the Ben Did Go?
Well, Spencer Purdy started the Ben Did Go 9 years ago. This is the 9th annual. It's coming up this September. So Spence is an incredible human being, was a great buddy of Ben's, just a legendary local figure with a huge heart. And I heard him on this podcast talk about how, giving back is everything, and how he's recently realized that. Well, here he is 9 years into giving back, and we're so grateful. But 9 years ago, he set out on a mission. I think it was when we set our goal of we're going to raise 3 $10,000 scholarships in 2015. And Spence is like, wait, what? I think I can help. I'm going to raise 10 grand on my own. I want to support one scholarship. So Spencer had the idea of venturing on a prone paddleboard from Newport to Catalina Island, 30-mile trek. Did it himself, solo mission, had some buddies. I think Carson Hill was in the boat alongside. Andrew Nahan, I believe, was part of that as well. But Spence was the only one in the water. Paddled 30 miles to Catalina one day. Second day.
Wait. Did the last, mile by himself? Because the boat had to go
Right.
in. He had never been to Catalina before
Right.
in his life.
Newport kid, hadn't been to Catalina, and he charged it anyway and found his way. Fortunately, that last mile you can see land at that point, but he made it to land. And he had this mission of taking it on in 3 days. That he was going to paddle one direction one day, run a marathon the next day, 26.2 miles around Catalina,
And it's one of the hardest,
gnarly.
one of the most beautiful, amazing marathons in the world, but it is very hilly.
Yeah.
Very, 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 a lot of elevation.
And
that's day 2.
And then day 3, got back on his paddleboard and paddled home. I think a couple buddies joined him for that venture in the water, but he did all that himself, raised a lot of money. I think that's when like social media, like Instagram stories, like that was just becoming a thing. So he was able to tell some of that story, and some of the people were, locals were super engaged. And it was so inspiring that the next year he had 12 more friends join him in the paddle from Newport to Catalina. And then I think after that it all changed. Year 3, we started coming back, right, from Catalina to Newport Beach.
And it was year 3. And so I heard about it as a prone paddler and a Catalina marathon runner. Like I didn't know Spence, but I knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And we used to do
Epic.
something called the paddle run paddle. We would do that
Yeah.
with Joe Bark out of the Palos Verdes area.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was the most fun, favorite thing in the world for me to do. So when I heard this kid doing it locally, I was like,
Wait,
I got to
what?
meet him. And I reached out to him after year 2, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know you, but I know how to paddle, I swear. I'd love to be a part. How do I get involved? And so year 3 was the first year I got involved, and that's when I met you.
Yeah, and that's when we met. We met in the water.
Can you tell the story, and I'll jump in on it?
Well, back to Fresno, baby. Not much water there. I mean, we had Millerton Lake. We'd go out, wave runners, skiing, and enjoying the water there, but nothing like the ocean. And year 2, so for years, the Carlsons had talked about. In fact, Chris and Ben had looked at boats. Chris is an East Coast guy, like you said. Forever's wanted to get a sailboat, and that was in their sights. Well, after everything with Ben, I think Chris dropped any guard there was and was like, let's live, let's go, let's get this boat. And so that boat has been instrumental. I've said that a few words now. I'm realizing that so many key things are taking place here, but the Carlsons got their boat, the Independence. And so we went alongside the group year 2 of the Ben Did Go. And so our family was on the Independence, kind of leading the way or assisting, providing water and nutrition throughout. But watching these guys was like, it was unbelievable to think that you have no land in sight. You have no idea what's going on out in front of you, but you're just charging. It's a marathon on the shoulders. And for us to take that in and witness that, I just remember thinking, wow, that is so epic. And here my little boys are, and this is all for, Steph's brother. This is for Ben. Like, how epic. And that's when I got the wild idea of, I want to do this. And I want to do it next year. So, next year, the 3.0. We charged it. You as well, right, Shu?
Yeah.
And I got to meet you in the water. I was out, I knew that it would take, growing up and playing sports, you can do anything you set your mind to, but this is a little bit different. Like, having not been a surfer, having not been in the water, respect to the surfers, the lifeguards, it's a different shape that you have to be in. And so I got a board. Actually, we were working with Hurley.
12-foot board.
12-foot stock board that I was probably a little bit too big for.
Not probably. Definitely.
I blame that on Punker. Punker advised that at the time. Punker Pat hooked me up with a board. We were doing things with Hurley. Hurley was legendary. That was a great moment in the early spawning of everything with the foundation. Bob Hurley was a great supporter. But Punker I told him that I wanted to do it, and he figured out, I don't know if I bought a board. He helped me out and got on a board, and then I'd just go out. Saturday mornings, it's like, 4 hours at a time, go out and put in some long miles. And I was in the harbor and out in the, out of the harbor mouth myself, and like figuring it all out. And then one day, you came along my side, and, easy breezy. I'm like dying, heavy winded breathing, and you're just cruising along. And dude, I'm what a blessing to have met you, Mark.
Well,
Like,
it was super fun.
You've been a huge inspiration to me personally, but to our foundation. You've done so much for us. And yeah, you're a huge part of the paddle community. Little did we know. And it's all been this beautiful alignment. And you've been a huge part of it. And now, I think I see you and Spence. You guys are like big and little brothers, cruising around, heading our Ben Did Go, which, by the way, raised a little over
225 last year.
Yeah. So huge. I mean, just epic to think that was all Spencer's idea to raise 10 grand. And here we are 9 years later. We just had our first meeting for this, which now it's become such a big group that, safety is a concern and a target. And we want to make sure that everybody's safe in the water. We have enough vessels for everybody and eyes on every single paddler. So just last month, we had our first day, a mandatory meeting and signups, and there were nearly 200 people that signed up. So more than anything, I think Ben would be so fired up to see that. I mean, he was a mega athlete, a charger, would do anything. He would have loved this event. So huge kudos to Spence for setting it all up, because this is something that Ben would have loved, and to see it inspiring so many. I mean, we have these meetings, and it's like the first one we always ask, like, who has never crossed the channel before? Who is this going to be the very first time paddling the channel for? And you see half the arms in the crowd go up, and you're like, wow, this is inspiring so many people, but they're capable. And now we've set a number of things in place to get them trained up and ready for that, but huge inspiration.
Yeah. Well, thanks for what you said, but let me shine a light on two things. One, I've prone paddled for 25 years, and there used to be like 3 of us here in Newport to train. We have one of the best places in the world to train because of the bay and the ocean and everything else. But there was like 3 of us, maybe 5 a year. You would never see them. You'd never see people until this happened. And I give a ton of credit to our friend Mike Roberts with Vessel Paddleboards for making boards accessible to most. You take his ability to make these boards accessible at a price point that makes sense, and these are good boards that are race ready, and you can go do the channel. And Spencer with the demand, because at the beginning, I was getting phone calls from all these lifeguard kids. Hey, I need a board. They just weren't available at a price point. They weren't mass produced. So you have Spencer, you have Mikey Roberts, those 2 together. We had a race here, the 2nd annual El Morro Classic, which was a qualifier for the Ben. There was 110 paddlers this past weekend. You would like, it's amazing. My heart is full because of prone paddling. But talking about prone, Jake, I'm going to tell my version of that same story. So we met off the water. No, this is a good one. We meet paddling off the
we're right in front of the BYC.
The BYC, yeah, Balboa Yacht Club.
Yeah.
And we're talking, and I think I may have even said, you look really strong, but you look really slow. How do we improve it?
That's still a problem today.
However, so the next time we paddle together is at the start of the Ben Did Go 3.0, where we leave Avalon, Catalina Island, paddle 30 miles across the ocean. It's a long day. As I always say, it's a great day. It may be a brutal day or it may be a hard day, but it's always it's a long body of water with just your shoulders, as you said it. And I don't know, we had 35 people that year. This year we'll have 150 or more. And I took off with you at the very start. And in very short order, you were off the back. And so I'm just casually, as we say today, like, hey, if you're off the back, you just know that, the boat may pick you up and take you to the front, or you may have to grab the rope. That is the protocol we follow. Well, you had a special exemption because of who you are. I didn't know that. So you're off the back, and I said it to you. I'm like, hey, Jake, just, remember, you may have to grab the rope or whatever. And I took off to go chat with the rest of the group, and I kind of went back and forth. Little did I know in your brain, you told me to F off. Because what I know you said in your brain was this. You're like, because we talked about it out of fact, nothing will get me off of this board today. I had no idea until afterward. And you came in, you finished it. This kid from Bakersfield or Fresno, baseball, football, on an undersized board, and nothing was going to get you off, and you got it done. And since that day, just my level, I've always loved you, but my level of respect went up 18-fold, because that's hard, and for all of the reasons, and just knowing that you were like, screw you, I'm going to finish this thing. Like, just, it is an inspiring story that I tell often. So,
and some of the toughest conditions we had in the 9 years we've been doing it.
It was pretty snotty.
Yeah.
It was howling at the end.
Yeah, it was for sure.
Yeah, I think, whenever you, not to be cliche, but whenever you know your why, and our why is so simple. I mean, we're paddling back in honor of Ben. The statue is the finish line. my in-laws, my wife, my kids are in the boat next to me. I mean, I feel like I cheated because it's so easy, right? With the crowd and with your why. It definitely wasn't an easy venture. Tough day on the water, but incredible. And I think that's what it is to everybody, that everybody hears a little snippet of that from somebody that did it last year and was like, I'm doing life. I want to take that on. I can do that. And so again, huge props to Spence, in honor of Ben. It's one of the most inspiring things. I mean, at the finish line now, you've got, Mario Doridelli, you've got, people like James Papazis aligning every restaurant, every person in town to be at that finish line. So now we have city council comes, the whole community is behind it right at Newport headquarters as this group comes in, and it's pretty epic to watch. Last year, I think our fleet of assisting boats was 50 boats.
Yeah.
I mean,
109 paddlers,
gnarly,
like 50 boats all the way across. And we stop and it's not a race,
Yeah.
right? Just for clarity, we go at a nice, easy pace. It's easy for some people, it's not easy for others, but we go at a pretty manageable pace. And one of my favorite things, and Spencer and I started this, I think year 3, is we stop mid-channel, do a little prayer statement, whatever, and everybody kind of takes a moment and you kind of swim down. It's kind of like crossing the equator. It's our own little local equator, but it's really powerful. And I've always done that when I'm not in race mode because, you're like, I'm halfway between land. I'm in the middle of big, deep water, and I'm very small. And so it's a really powerful statement. And I think for anybody that crosses that, especially their first time, you really feel it. And what's really amazing, and I think you guys know, but we had Don Meek, who's a surf industry icon. He was in here, and the day that we met, he's 65, and he goes, "Mark, my bucket list has been to cross that channel." And I was interviewing him the day before the kickoff, required kickoff meeting. He's now training. He went and bought a board from Mikey. He was at the kickoff meeting, and he keeps texting me how fired up he is on this. John Wadsworth, who was another great community contact.
Huge.
And I grew up with his wife. His oldest son, Spencer, is good friends with my son. Like, small, we're very close. His son has done it, and now John is training and just did the 16-mile, was a very tough paddle this weekend, and he's fired up on it. So it's really cool. But the Ben has been the catalyst to getting people to do it. And let me just real quickly say where the name came from. So it's Ben Did Go. It's modeled after another lifeguard that lost his life in the line of duty. This was Eddie Aikau, big wave surfer, iconic guy, and he died in the ocean. And there's been bumper stickers in Hawaii forever said Eddie would go. And out of respect, we have Ben Did Go. And so again, I get chicken skin every time I think about that as well. So it's really amazing that it's a fundraiser. There's so much to it, to your point, when you cross that channel, and there's so much that goes in and so much that comes out. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Interesting as we're thinking about how do we fundraise for this foundation, the first thing that comes up always is, let's do a golf tournament.
Right.
And nothing wrong with those. I love golf.
You sure?
But this is special.
Yeah, and this is right up Ben's alley. I mean, this is, you want to do something that would be very meaningful, and there'd be nothing better than this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's talk about meaningful, and this will kind of get us close to closing out. You mentioned it, but a very big thing just happened last week in Newport at Balboa Pier with the Junior Guard building. Can you quickly talk about why that was so important and the role in it? And because that's something else that, Jake, you personally have gotten very involved in, and the board did. Talk about the importance.
So
let me just say a couple things. So when we formed the foundation, we realized that, like many family foundations, lifespan of these things is like 3-4 years, and then they just kind of. So we were looking at, how do we save money? How do we save infrastructure money? So we looked for another 501c3 to join up with. We looked at a number of them, including some water polo foundations and things. We came up by coming alongside the Newport Beach Junior Lifeguard Foundation, and they were so good in allowing us to be a DBA of them for a long time. And as a result, Jake and I were on the board of the Newport Beach Junior Lifeguard Foundation. and I'll let you
got it.
take it from there.
Okay, thank you for that. I wasn't clear on
So I
that.
think as a legal entity early on, we were just told, hey, setting up a 501c3, first of all, is nothing that any of us had intended to do, right? This is on the wake of a loss. But we now have this money, and how do we steward this for good? What's the next step? And so, some people had reached out to Chris and said, look at these organizations. And so Chris, I think that was a conversation you had with Graham Harvey. Graham, what a stud, is the chairman of the board of the Newport Beach Junior Lifeguard Foundation, and allowed us to house, umbrellaed under their organization. And the Newport Beach Junior Lifeguard Foundation's sole purpose was to fundraise for a junior lifeguard headquarters building, a permanent building. So 40 years ago, the program was started by Renee Boyer, and started with just a handful of kids. And the impact that it's had and the way that has grown, that program has grown. I mean, in Newport Beach, it's a rite of passage. In the summertime, it's 7 weeks. This year, I think they have over 1,400 kids in the program. A number of lifeguards overseeing some of the greatest days these kids are going to have in their youth, while showing them about water safety and responsibility, but also about building their character. And that's what I love the most about it, is that we can be a part of this character building for, we live in a crazy world. And to have an opportunity to steward the youth, and what a special character building program it is. So their sole purpose was to get this building fundraised. And so, Chris and I think I joined the board 4 years ago. And after the statue was completed, and being that I'm not a lifeguard and water safety is in good hands with our team, I was like, how do I drive my efforts? And my efforts are more about connecting, and I love to see things from concept to completion. That's kind of the artistic brain in me, but also that's what I like to do. So seeing that this group had been working for years I think they had plans of fundraising, and they had done some fundraising along the way. But what I realized from what we had just done with Ben and the statue and other fundraisers around the community was we're aligned with a lot of local philanthropists, a lot of people that love this community and absolutely love the Junior Guard program. And there's so much alignment. I mean, Ace Hardware has been giving to both organizations. You guys do a rad roundup. Every June is for the Junior Guards, and every July is for the Ben Carlson Foundation. So that's been amazing, whether that's $7-10 a month, that's really special. And then we get to put that to use for these programs. So I saw that Graham and there's 5 other guys on that board for, I think they set it up 12 years ago, that foundation. So I joined a few years ago, and it was a huge team effort, huge community effort. But to get a building, funded, which was a partnership between the foundation and the city. So this, I think the foundation raised $2.5 million towards a $7 million building. That was huge, but a lot of it, in my opinion, it all starts with a campaign. And so we did something 3 years ago called Make a Splash. And that was a whole event that we had at Arbor Real Estate, and raised $350,000. And simultaneously, that brought awareness to the campaign, this idea that this is all happening. And David Pyle, local, very successful gentleman that loves his community, reached out to Graham, and I believe that was through Carson Hill. I like to give creds, the behind-the-scenes creds, because you don't know what's making these wheels turn. David, you heard about it from somebody, and I saw Carson at the unveiling last week, Carson Hill, and I told him, I'm like, dude, that was because of you. You had a conversation with the Pyle family, and that happened because of you. And then Mr. Pyle took action and did a match program that he's up to $800,000. It ended up being, I think, might have been $1.5 million raised by the Pyles with the match program. Pretty amazing. But we saw that through, and it all the building was unveiled last year. This is the 40th year of the program, so really special. And as that foundation is now, that was their sole goal. So the Newport Beach Junior Lifeguard Foundation is going to hang on for the next year and take care of any corrections that need to happen at the building if necessary. And otherwise, we're really excited to kind of step into that role where We will steward the junior guard program from, outside fundraising, or if there's any other needs, to then what we want to do is identify, there's a lot of bigger goals to reach inland, to help kids get water safe, to provide scholarships for the JG program in town, but also to look beyond us and see who's doing it right and what we can learn from them. Huntington's doing great things, but then to find other places that there is a water community there, but they might not have that kind of program, and how can we take what we know or what our lifeguards have here and helps other organizations out and help them grow safety programs for their youth.
Awesome. It's so great. And listen, for anybody watching or listening, if you kind of put all the things together that we've been talking about, from the foundation to the junior guard program and everything in between, the community engagement, the community support, the international outreach, all the things being done, I just want to give you guys giant kudos of taking something that was tragic and so difficult for your family and turning it into something that's really been incredible for so many families. And it touches so many people. And the last thing I'll say is that, I've been involved with a lot of nonprofits, and we all know that nonprofits come down to not just a vision and passion, but it comes down to community, financial support, and leadership. And the difference between one that will, like you said, last 3 or 4 years, and here we are 10 years getting bigger and more immersed and more professionalized, takes great leadership. So kudos to you guys for that. And also doing that knowing that every day, like I did to you today, you have to talk about or think about the final rescue of your son. And so I can't imagine how difficult it is, and I give you incredible praise for how you guys live with that and deal with that with such grace and big smiles and great things. Because a lot of people are like, you know what, I'm 10 years in, I'm done. Like, I need to move on from that. And you guys are almost doubling down and doing such good stuff. So humongous thank you from the community, from a big fan. I'm so happy to know you guys and your family and be part of the Ben Carlson Foundation and all the great stuff that you do. So thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing the story and a tear or two, and keep doing all the really good stuff. Last thing, if people want to find out more about the Ben Carlson Foundation, California Water Safety, any of these things, where can people go?
bencarlsonfoundation.org is our website. You can give there. You can find out everything on our story. To learn a little bit more about the story as well, which we didn't plug, is Tim Burnham produced an incredible film called Part of Water with great. Jack Murgatroyd, Hunt House Pictures. Unbelievable. That was really special. It came out a few years back, but you can find it on any streaming platform. But check that out to learn a little bit more about Ben's story. And find us on Instagram at Ben Carlson Foundation.
Awesome. Chris, Jake, thank you so much. You guys are rad. This was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Shu.
All right, boys.
All right.
Little